Well, hello, my friends. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Grand Torino. You join us here in Coventry over on Facebook, D Live, Periscope, and Twitch. And hopefully, not long before soon, I was expecting and hoping that D Live might be, or Instagram might be in the house, but it doesn't seem to be so. Before I bring in my next guest, as I always do, please don't forget our friends over at The Little Pharma, thelittlepharma.ie. We love our enzymes so much, we keep them alive. Wheatgrass and barley grass juice, antioxidants, full of life. No wonder they're so good. Just shake and shoot. And don't forget to enter in your promo code GT for your substantial discount. As the room fills up, delighted to see Max Trax joining us over on Facebook. Sean joining us over on Periscope. Yeah, we've got D before as the Facebook fills up. Welcome, my friends. Join us. Please do join us. Unfortunately, it seems that we are live over on Instagram as well, but the picture isn't working out too well. So I will attend to that shortly. Let me sort of set out the premise of today's disquisition with my esteemed guest, my beautiful guest, Nattie, who's sitting in the green room there. She's staying fairly well away from the Bollinger. So just a quick sort of catch up with the events of today. The channel over on YouTube received a 2-week ban. We won't be able to upload or live stream for a further 2 weeks. That's going to bring us up close to probably way past the American election, or just in time before the American election. Great to see you, Bobby, sir. Great to see you, Brenda. Brendan is joining us. Great to see you. Keith Cookham coming in from Periscope. Oh, that got it, Ted. Oh, that got it, Ted. Any of you remember the Fast Show will remember who I'm talking about. Hillary joining us over on Instagram, and Gordon Ryan. Colin Rochford over on Instagram. Great to see you over there, Colin. You will have to excuse the picture. I don't know if the stream is coming through. And we did kind of lose Nattie there, but she is back again. Welcome back. You're just leaving your bubble, Sean. I hope it's not the virus from Open Minds. You card. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you for joining us over here on all these platforms. Okay, let me just bring in my next guest let me just start it off. One of the very main purposes and the reasons that I started this channel up, and the reason that we are drawing such ire, is that first of all, I remind you that my first broadcasts were about the protection of the children's rights of those that were being brought abroad to foreign shores and having mutilations performed on their body, brought back to this jurisdiction with no punishment, or I see in front of for the parents, or no precedent being sent to the parents to stop that. Up to date, the last time we looked into it, there was over 18,000 young girls had been shipped abroad to have an FGM. That spurred me on then to want a voice for the voiceless. This brings us at this critical juncture of what we're all facing now, and what we're all slowly becoming to realize of all of this nonsense that's happening over here, is those that have the untold stories, those that we first spoke of with Fiona about with disabilities, and those with clear disabilities. But there are other types of disabilities and incidences that never get spoke about, and people are losing that in their humanity, a lack of empathy. I want to bring Nattie in straight away. Nattie, how are you? Great to see you. Thank you so very much for joining me. Just a quick aside. As far as I'm aware, over on Instagram, you are just getting my picture, but Facebook, D Live, and Twitch, you should see, and you have the effervescent, the beautiful Nattie joining me this morning. Nattie, I don't know how we're going to start to get into this, but we're just going to get into it straight away. I was taken by your very last Instagram post, and I encourage you all. I will leave links to Nattie's Instagram account in the description box after the show, but just let's get through the conversation first of all. And I was very much taken with your story, and it kind of resonated. So it resonated with me personally, but it resonated with, I would imagine, so many other people that are voices, but that can't share what they feel is their shame on the reason they can't wear a mask. Can you extrapolate a little bit further on your post?
Yeah, so I have experienced a couple of incidences myself around not wearing my mask, not wearing a mask. I wore a mask once, and I had quite a confrontational incident yesterday that like really brought on like quite a vicious anxiety attack.
Yeah.
And I just thought I, like yourself, have shared around truth and mask wearing, but I've not shared my own personal reasoning behind not wearing a mask. And after the incident yesterday I had in the local shop, I just was like, do you know what? I've tried to explain to people through like Facebook comments or, around people who suffer with trauma, people who have suffered sexual abuse,
Yeah.
and not just only sexual abuse, but other kinds of abuse, like physical abuse as well. And the triggers that like wearing a mask can bring up for them, like mental triggers, anxiety triggers, PTSD triggers. And yesterday, I had an incident last week in the shop, and I thought, I'd been thinking all through the week, should I share online? And I didn't. But I shared yesterday because I had informed the shop of, my reasoning for not wearing a mask, which I didn't have to do. I informed them it was because, it induced a trigger from sexual abuse. And they still harassed me in the store yesterday. And I just thought, like, no, like this shit needs to be shared. Like I've seen like the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre has tried to share it before, and nobody is getting it. Like nobody is actually just getting it. So that's why I shared my post yesterday, because there are so many different dimensions to medical exemptions, and there's so many different dimensions to anxiety exemptions as well. And my story is just one dimension. I've had
Yeah.
many people share their stories, which has with me since I shared that post yesterday. Like my inbox.
Sorry, Natty. Yeah, you're
And
back.
the amount of different stories and realizations that people are only having where we're back. The reason they can't wear a mask is actually they've not known why before. They've not been able to wear a mask. They just know that it triggers them. But me sharing my story has actually been able to help them put a beginning to their trigger. So I just wanted to let people know that they weren't alone, because I know that I'm not the only person who has, this trigger. I know I'm not the only person who has this experience, and I know I'm not the only person who has this fear, and I just wanted, I've spent a lot of years now working on myself, internally, doing inner work and ancestral healing and stuff, to know that the power in sharing those stories can give other people so much validation, and maybe give them a little bit of courage to actually stop. Like I know that there are people intentionally putting themselves in trigger because they don't want to experience the confrontation and the shame associated with not wearing a
Yeah.
mask.
Yeah.
And that's actually more dangerous than the confrontation and the shame of wearing the mask. So it brings back to a martyr cycle of putting everybody else before yourself, when actually our mental health needs to be our top priority, and that's
You, we
that's
we
it. End up.
spoke earlier on, and we will get to the ancestral. And I know you're
Yeah,
gonna take us on a journey from the womb and from the yin and the yang between the sexes, when it's in balance and when it is in order. And I'm sure you're going to bring us up to that point as well. But like I said to you, first of all, live chat is awash with comments of your bravery and that you're inspirational for coming out and speaking. I don't know if you can see any of the comments there. Our good friends, John, Jamie, and Open Minds, really commending you for bravery, as I did when I first seen your post. And just to sort of encapsulate that for you, Nattie went out of her way and just spoke with such openness and honesty, and spoke about the distress and the trauma, and how the mask represents and what it does physically, and triggering an emotional response that quite literally came out of nowhere for
yeah,
you. And
literally.
then,
Yeah,
but through your training and your recent understanding, you were able to look inwards and kind of resolve that for yourself. And I want you to be able to, and I'd love you to be able to extrapolate on that process a little bit more, and kind of share that to try and give the others out there that suffer from the exact same unspoken, the shame and the martyr theory as well. Sorry, Nattie, go ahead there.
so for me, my journey with like my own inner work and trigger work specifically began when I started Dynamo Doula training. Dynamo Doula training was run by a woman called Angela Gallo. She's in Australia. And it started out as a doula training, which is a birth worker training, a birth and postpartum worker training. And it turned into anything but a whole life training. But in that training, I learned that triggers are actually our friends. Triggers are actually a guide. They are a message. They are a gift. Um, it's obviously in your perception. You need to change your perception from the trigger being a bad thing to a trigger being a good thing. Have that like reframe in your mind. But for me, I found that the more I was open to observing my triggers, the more I was open to exploring what was behind the trigger, what was the trauma behind the trigger, what was the shame behind the trigger, what was the negative connotation or the negative, what was negative in my brain behind the trigger. What happened then was I was able to name the trigger. And when you name it, you can claim it. And when you claim it, then it's got no bearing over you. And then it's no longer a trigger anymore. So in me doing the trigger work, it has been me through the triggers. I learned about ancestral healing, which I will talk about, ancestral trauma. And I learned that we all have our own interpersonal triggers from our own personal experiences, but we also have triggers that stems from our ancestral history or ancestral trauma that we are passed through our DNA. So it opened up a whole world to me of healing that I could never have comprehended really and truly before. You know, I have always been a person that has been afraid of confrontation. I was always a person that was afraid of confrontation.
It's
Any sign of
understandable,
any
yeah.
confrontation, whether it be within myself, outside, I would run away. And a lot of us are very much in that. We are afraid of that confrontation because we want to live like, happy, happy, happy. But actually, what I've learned is that confrontation triggers fear. It's all a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gift for you to be able to heal yourself, your ancestral line, so that you can then show up fully for yourself. And when you can show up fully for yourself, then you can show up for the people that are around you, and not in martyrdom. You're not doing it from a place of martyrdom. You're doing it from a place of unity within oneself.
Does that
Does that make
encourage
sense?
you? Or yeah, it does. Makes perfect sense to me as well. Did that give you the strength and the ownership?
So when I put the mask on the first time.
No, go ahead, Natty. We just got a lag. Sorry, just to let you crack on.
Oh no, I can't hear you. Actually, you're gone.
Am I gone altogether? Carry on, Natty. Carry on.
Just me crack on. I didn't actually hear anything that you said there, but when I put the mask on first, I was getting on the bus, and it was the day after masks became mandatory. It was like literally the next day, and I unexpectedly had to get a bus. So I didn't have a mask. A lady lent me a mask, and I put the mask on. I paid the driver, and by the time I got to the stairs of the bus, I had this physical inner tremor. That's the only way I can describe it. It was a tremor that just went through my whole body. And having spent years doing trigger work on myself, I am able to sense the triggers when they come, like the first sign of the trigger, the sign that comes in your body, because triggers give you a warning before you project your trigger or you're in trigger. Your body warns you that you're about to be triggered. And I've done enough work on myself to know that that was my body warning me. It was my body warning sign that I was about to go into trigger. So I took the mask off, and I was really confused at the time. I remember sitting on the bus. I was feeling really apprehensive. I was feeling really anxious. And I didn't know what the fuck just happened. Now, as time goes on, it's actually taken me quite a while to work out the beginning of this trigger, but I've been able to work it out now. And that trigger was the exact same feeling that I felt as a 6 or 7 year old child sitting in a bathroom after I'd been abused. So, during that abuse situation, my abuser had put his hands over my mouth. And I have always had experience repressed memories. So that means that I don't remember the abuse, and I don't remember a lot of my childhood. And that's very, very common for abuse victims, is that the memory is not there because your brain will dissociate from the trauma because it's too much. So it just disappears, and it doesn't disappear. If you know, like the movie Inside Out, it would just go in a ball to the back of the, it just goes to the back, but it's still there. And this particular incident was the only incident that I ever remembered. But since I put the mask on, different dimensions and the little details of that incident has become clear to me over time. The memories have started to come back, and now I actually have a full-on clear picture of exactly what happened in that incident in itself. For me, I have spoken about masks. I've spoken about, the lack of validity towards masks, or, what the general consensus around that we've been speaking around masks. I've been speaking about that. And I've also seen that a lot of people who have either been physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, some people have been gagged while they were raped. There's so many different dimensions to it, that, covering your mouth is what the trigger is. It's some people, it is the mask itself. For some people, it is the covering of the mouth. It's different for everybody. And I just feel that it's a really important, conversation to dive into, even though it's a really hard conversation to dive into. It's a really hard conversation, especially when we're talking about shame, and especially with this country's history of abuse, because we know that probably most people listening will have in some way experienced.
Take us through that, as we spoke about earlier on
in some
today.
form or another.
As we spoke about earlier today, hopefully you can hear. Can you hear me?
I feel that.
Oh.
Sorry, go on.
I know there's a little bit of a lag, so I want to just get a question. About. Can you take us through that experience, that understanding that we spoke of earlier about the martyr in the Irish psychology, because of our slavery, because of the connection and the stealing away, that it is a deep set trauma in the nation of Ireland, that we have this psychosis about ourselves, and that relates to your situation as well. And it's about the shame. It's the ego and the shame. Sorry, Nettie, go ahead.
So I actually had a bit of a realization today after we had that conversation, because shame is shame. That's what it is. Martyrdom is a physical manifestation of shame. So shame is an emotion that drives thinking, that states, because of something I did or something that I am therefore fundamentally unworthy of love, joy, belonging, connection, or success. Now, that quote came from the Queer Cosmos. He's on Instagram. So as humans, we are neurobiologically hardwired for connection. And in the absence of it, there is a cognitive decline, which in a nutshell is disconnect from self. And a disconnect from self enforces martyrdom, or enforces a martyr cycle. And literally, in a nutshell, in a really easy English to explain way, martyrdom is where you put everything before yourself. You put your last. We have been taught that it is selfish to put yourself first, and it's selfless to put everybody else first. That's, as a society, what we have been taught. It's actually on a worldwide thing. It is a worldwide thing that we have been taught, that it's selfish to put yourself first. And we all know the term self-centered, like you're being self-centered if you are putting yourself first above other people. And one thing that I learned through Dynamo Doula training was actually that that's bullshit. It's actually bullshit. So to be right, if you put every single person, your kids, your partner, your parents, your siblings, if you put them, their feelings, their emotions, if you put all of that and you allow their feelings to drive your behavior, that means that you are doing yourself a disservice. Okay. And in doing that disservice, nobody gets the best of you, including yourself. When you put yourself first, and I'm talking above your children, above your, which is really hard and going to be really confronting for some people to hear, because as a nation, the kids come first here. You know, you do everything for the kids, you do everything for your partner, you do everything for your parents, you do everything for your family, and you do nothing for yourself. And like I said to you earlier on, we, like Irish funerals, and especially with women, it's wasn't she great, she did everything for them kids, wasn't she great, she did everything for the neighbors, she did everything for her parents, she did everything for her siblings, she did everything for her husband. When do we ever talk about somebody actually doing something for themselves? Because when somebody does something for themselves, we judge them as selfish or self-centered. But our judgment only really reflects our inability to be selfish or self-centered. But bringing it back to selfish versus selfish, or selfish versus selflessness, if we are putting everybody else before, we are taught that putting ourselves first is selfish and putting everybody else first is selfless. But if we put ourselves first, then that means that everybody automatically gets the best of us. So isn't that selfless? And if we put everybody else first, it means that we're putting ourselves last. And that means that nobody, including ourselves, including our children, including our partner, gets the best of us. So isn't that selfish? When you flip the selfish and selflessness around on a full 180 and actually see it in that completely different angle, we have been brought up in a society where you are honored for putting everybody above yourself. And if you put yourself first, then you are shamed for that. And this is like within the mask wearing. I am putting myself first and my mental health first by not wearing a mask. And I am called selfish for doing that. But am I not being selfless? Because in doing that and putting myself first, everybody else around me actually is getting the best version of me that I can be. Whereas when I was putting everybody else first and I was living in the martyrdom cycle, and, you know, if this had happened 2 years ago, I probably would have worn the mask, you know, regardless of my trigger, I probably would have worn the mask. And then who would be getting the best of me? Me living in trigger constantly, me being unhappy, me being sad, me being angry, me being whatever, you know, full of shame. Who gets the best of you? Nobody does. And that's pretty fucking selfish, I think. Because don't we want everybody in the world to get the best version of us possible? People's judgments, when people judge you for being selfish or self-centered, one thing that I've learned on my journey about judgments is that when we judge other people, or when we admire other
Should be back.
people were saying that I was brave and I was in, but people are only seeing that within me because they of themselves in me. Only judging my inability to be selfish. So, in terms of martyrdom, this mask in enforcement and the emotional manipulation in trying to get everybody to wear masks, it's not anything other than martyrdom. And this country is rife in martyrdom. And those people who are not engaging in that martyr cycle and who are breaking that martyr cycle and who are putting themselves first are triggering everybody else around them. And that it's the projection, the judgment is a projection of that person's own inner trigger. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I don't know if the lag is still catching on, Natty.
No, I
I'm
can hear
I'm
you now.
oh, great, great. I'm overjoyed to get in your way because I love the way you explain it, and I love listening to it when you dish it out there. And so many of the live chat over on Facebook are completely in agreement with your thoughts there as well. And we are awash with the martyrdom syndrome as we have. I
Yeah,
just want to make our
it
I just want
is.
to make a quick I just want to make a quick excuse to our apologies to Instagram, where we weren't able to get the feed, but the sound is still working, and I'm going to let it carry on. And for our friends just getting used to the new setup over on Twitch D Live, we don't have the ticker tape for the comment section, but I know you're very much on board with what Natty is saying there again. So we're coming up onto 26 minutes. In the last 10 minutes, Natty, stairs bring us down into your going forward now, the mask wearing, what it means to you. How are you finding it in your day to day, having to address people by explaining to them, as you said to me at the very start, and telling people and being honest, the effects, the reaction that you're getting, and what you hope to see going forward in the last 10 minutes, please?
Well, for me, I feel like I've had a couple of experiences now where I have been honest. Like we all know that I am under no obligation, or anybody is under any obligation to tell somebody their medical history or the reasons why they're not wearing a mask. That nobody is under any obligation. But the reason that I am doing it is to try and make my own experience a little easier. And because I have actually no issue with sharing my story. Some people do, and that's perfectly fucking valid, and nobody should have to share their story. But for me, I just felt that it would make my life a little bit easier. And actually and truly, it hasn't. And I think that if somebody was to share, like the first person I shared it with, people just don't believe you. They don't believe you. And that shows a massive disconnect and a massive lack of trust that we have within the human race and with our fellow humans, that we cannot trust people to make the best decisions for them. And the reason that we don't trust people to make the best decisions for them is because we don't trust ourselves. Again, it always comes back to self. And people will project that inner world outwards. What I hope in, like sharing my story is that it will, people who have been judging people for not wearing masks, it might hopefully make them rethink, and actually the next time they do go to say something to somebody, they can stop and actually say, well, do you know what, I have actually got no idea what is going on in this person's world, and quite frankly it's none of my business, so let them just go about their day. It's very confrontational to have someone come up to you in a store while you're trying to do your shopping and stand in front of your trolley and block your way. It's very confrontational, it's very authoritative. It's almost like an abuse in power as well, which we know this country is rife in. And what I just want to share is that we will never become united as a human race, and we will never become united together unless we can unite within ourselves first. And when we unite within ourselves first, and we can love all of ourselves, the masculine, the feminine, the light, the dark, the yin, the yang, when we can love the dark parts of ourselves as much as we love the light parts of ourselves, it's only then that we're going to be able to love another person for their light and their dark. And we cannot become unified as a country, as a nation, as a species, unless we do the inner work and become united within ourselves first. And what I really want to, the message that I want to spread is that of unity and love. And unity and love are really one of the same. But it all has to begin with self. This world is just full of people projecting their own inner world, their own inner fear, their own inner shame onto other people. And it does not have to be that way. Life doesn't have to be. We can live in harmony. People can wear masks if they want to. people cannot wear masks if they can't, and even if they don't want to. Why can't we love each other for our differences? Why do we have to create confrontation? Why do we have to create a fight? Why do we have to create this shame and judgment cycle? And then also perpetuating the silence cycle, because that's what victims are living in. They're living in the shame cycle that is rife in Ireland. Keep everything inside your four walls. How every single person watching this will have heard this. What happens in these four walls stays inside these four walls.
I
And
was
that
just
is
about
the
to say that.
biggest, it's the biggest fucking disservice that we can do for humanity and for ourselves, because that only invokes shame. The less we talk about shame, the more we feel it. And that's
Absolutely
it in a nutshell.
amazing.
The less.
That's
Sorry, go on,
absolutely
what were you
amazing. Absolutely amazing, Nattie. Nadia, we've just hit the 30-minute mark, and I think it's a perfect place to leave off, only because of the technical issues on mine. And I want to invite you back as soon as we get them,
Yeah,
cleared up
I'm here.
again, so we can have a. But I think you've thrown out your own such bravery, such honesty, and such clarity of thought as well. For a
Thank
lot of
you.
people who would have no understanding or would not even begin to understand what someone that doesn't wear a mask without any physical, clear disability, you have no idea what's going on in their world, what their story is, the reason why they don't do it. But with the state enforcing its will on the people, I do agree with the tenant to love each and everybody. I do. I agree with it. I don't hate anybody in my life, but I will not allow a dictatorial, authoritarian state enforce me to do things against my will and lead me and bribe me that I may conduct my business within the world only under their, not only their supervision, which is what they're looking for, but with their authority and with their blessing. I cater to no man. As a free man of Ireland and as a free woman of Ireland, you bow the knee to nobody, in my mind, in God and in your God, whatever God you choose that walks with you. That's the only person I will cow the knee to, and fear nothing and nobody. Nattie, I'm going to let us go there. Like I said, I'm going to round it up there. I'm going to invite you back on again next week as well. And I encourage people to follow Nattie on her Instagram page and follow her story and spread out that message. Please share this stream as well and the others to follow and help those that don't have that voice that Nattie so eloquently after giving them. Please just share that on your platforms. Nattie,
can I leave it with one thing?
I was just about to say, the final word to you.
There is only one true universal law that we all have to abide by, and that is the law of free will. And that's it. It's the law of free will. We all have free will. And if you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Just don't do it. Stand in yourself, stand in your power, and stand in your truth. And it is hard to do that. I know how hard it is to do that because, with the work that I've done on myself, I've still found it extremely difficult. But the courage and the healing and the trust that you will get, that you will feel within yourself, will just, it's just love. It's just love. And thank you for having me. Honestly, I've enjoyed it.
Me too. No, and I'm only sorry about the technical difficulty, but we will clear it up. And there's a whole, like I said to you, I was enthralled from our conversation earlier on today.
Yeah, you were.
And it was a real meeting of minds as well. So, I'm open to exploring that on the public forum in front of with all our friends here on live chat and everywhere else.
Yeah.
And I
thank you everybody for your comments as well. That means a lot. It really does.
Yeah, please, and hopefully it'll just, we can spread this and we can kind of give, like I say, we can give people pause for thought to consider people like yourself that have suffered, dreadful consequence, and you only realize that because of the mask wearing. And just a quick note as well, Nattie, a lot of other victims would only have come to understood that because they were made to wear the mask, and then the anxiety that they experienced that they couldn't figure it out at first of all. But I want to lead that as our next conversation, and we will dive into that very same subject on the next stream. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
I'll let you go. Take care. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, lads, my apologies again. Instagram, so sorry about the feed. I know you've got the audio over there. I encourage everybody on in Instagram to please make way over to the Grand Torino's Facebook page. It's also over on DLive and Twitch. It'll be repeating over there as well. I will upload that conversation straight up onto the first YouTube upload when the YouTube restream or live stream is back in 2 weeks' time. But please, for more interviews like this and for other thought-provoking articles and information throughout the rest of the world, please, if you could, don't forget, smash that like button if you're new to the channel. Also, please hit the subscription button and share this on all your other variable platforms if you would. I know we're not over on YouTube, but we will be over on BitChute, and I'd love you to leave your comments over on BitChute. And please give us a little subscription over on BitChute if you would, and any of the other platforms that are streaming, Twitch, Periscope, and DLive. I want to thank my guest, Nattie, so very much again for her complete honesty. It was an absolute gem to have her here, and just to let that canary sing was a pure joy for me to listen to it. As you know, we are demonetized, but we are not demoralized, and we rely fully on not only your benevolence but your kindness, but never your charity. Also, why not consider sending us a snail mail over at PO Box 131179 in Wicklow if you have a mind to send us some mail via that. And again, like I say, I can only just thank Nikki for her absolute honesty and joy that she's after bringing to me there as well. Please look out and follow her over. I'll leave links in the description box over on BitChute and over on Facebook as well. And I'll pin it to any other comments that you may see over there. Please join me again first thing in the morning, 9 a.m. start, live streaming on all these other platforms. And we will continue to develop these platforms while we are off the air over on YouTube. But again, thank you all so very much for your continued support, and I'll see you in the morning.